So we've worked with a bunch of clients that are going through their FedRAMP journey. We've also had a bunch of clients come to us that have tried to get through a FedRAMP journey and run into issues and either failed, spent much time, money, didn't get there for whatever reason. So let's talk about some of the biggest mistakes that we see happening to people. And when we look at risk management, we look at your planning, your execution, and your reporting. So let's highlight in each one of those phases what's the biggest mistake. So let's kick off with planning. Biggest mistake in planning.
They don't do a good job at planning. It's not really necessarily anyone's fault. It's hard. You have a lot of moving parts and you have a lot of new demands, and oftentimes, planning, you'll bring in a partner, you'll bring in a consultant, and it's just overwhelming. The thing is that data comes from anywhere and everywhere within a cloud service provider, and so it's really important that you get dialed in on the stacks of your organization. Some people call them enclaves, right? But you have authentication flows, so there's data that goes on that. And then there's file imports and file exports. There's collaborating on things. And it's really important that you just take each data flow and you go, okay, who touches that? And eventually you'll have a flow of the people and the process and the technology that's used for your whole entire stack, right? Because every stack has a purpose, right? Every stack needs data to fulfill that purpose, right? So that's how we start all of our planning.
Yeah, and when you don't approach it that way, like we hear it from 3POs all the time where, CSPs will do all this work towards scoping, but they've scoped it incorrectly. They haven't gone through each of those stacks. They haven't gone through wherever the data, they haven't followed the data, and they scope it incorrectly. And like you always say, math problem that starts wrong, it's going to end wrong.
That's right. No matter how intricate it gets in between, it's always going to be wrong. And once you have that, then it's really easy to think of the different threats. When we're talking about FedRAMP and we're talking about SOC 2, whatever it is, we're talking about cyber risk, it always goes back to the data, right? So when you have those flows and you think about certain threats, like physical security threats, that's not something you're going to spend a lot of time auditing because that's done in the cloud service provider. Now, you do need some sort of assurance there, right? You need to see like, hey, are they FedRAMP, or do they have a SOC 2 or some sort of sticker that they put on the forehead of the company that says that we do security. So it's really, really important that you follow those data flows at the very beginning. And if you do that, then your plan is going to probably make a lot of sense. And then you just execute the plan.
Yep. And that's another key part, I think, in the planning that we talk about a lot is you want to bring in people who know and who can help, but you don't want to check out of the process. You don't want to, if you have somebody saying like, hey, we'll just take this off your hands.
Warning. Yeah.
Danger, Will Robinson.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Most of the partners that we work with are going to demand some sort of some input. They're going to be really efficient with your time, and they're going to learn a lot really fast, and they're going to be really focused. But if you abdicate this whole risk management process to something else, to some tool or to somebody, you're going to get the mediocre result you deserve. We always say that you have to be involved in some way, shape, or form.
So in the planning, biggest mistakes are, we talked about two of them there. Make sure you scope it correctly. So don't incorrectly scope your data flows and your boundary. And the second thing is don't abdicate the planning. Make sure you're involved. Let's talk about execution. One of the biggest things I see in the execution of clients when they're actually going about doing the implementation work, doing the assurance work, is they don't have the correct team built.
That's right. Experience matters. And risk management is really doing the dishes. You've got to execute those controls. There's a lot of automation, and that's great. There's things that happen automatically, and we want to look for ways to do that more and more. But you need to have someone that is experienced, that understands what can go wrong in the different scenarios with cyber. And a lot of things look similar. So if you get someone who's really experienced, who's maybe been an auditor for a long time, or has been a security practitioner for a long time, someone who's really understands how things work and what can go wrong, that's really good.
Yeah.
Right, to do it that way.
Yeah, and those people, they can be internal employees. You might have a head of GRC or a head of FedRAMP that knows and has been there. You might go external and get a consultant or advisor. Either of those is fine. Get a 3PAO who partners with you and can help you walk through the process.
At the very beginning.
Great ones out there.
Yeah. When we did our FedRAMP process, well, we started off with our data flows and we said, this was great. And it was so smooth. And right off the bat, they could say, hey, I know you're going for FedRAMP High. They're not authorized at High. And I said, but they're planning on doing it. And he's like, I wouldn't do that yet. Yep. I wouldn't do it until you know that they're doing it. Right.
Yeah, get a 3PO that wants to work with you through the process. The other thing too that I would call out is make sure you have the internal support to do FedRAMP. FedRAMP can't really be a side project.
Right.
And we see a lot because in order to go get FedRAMP, you're going to have to implement a lot of things. You're going to have to make some changes internally. You're going to have to change some processes internally.
You're going to need a budget.
You're going to need a budget, and you don't want every one of those changes to be a negotiation. You don't want to have to try and convince every leader in the company of what needs to happen. So if you're going to go at FedRAMP, part of that team is you need an executive sponsor, a chief something officer who is in charge of coming in and just saying, this change has to happen. We just have to do it. So that you're not having to try and convince everyone to go about the adjustments that need to happen.
FedRAMP is so comprehensive in what it demands, and it's really excellent once you got your hands around it, right? You can understand what's going on, but getting to that point is so overwhelming. And so that's why, finding the right people and getting that plan at the very beginning, keep it as simple as possible. It's already hard enough, right? So you can't skip those things.
So biggest mistake in the execution phase is not having the right team. Make sure you've got the right team assembled. And then let's talk reporting. The biggest mistake in reporting, I think, is obvious. Don't try to do it manually.
And don't have it be divorced from the other phases of the process, right? If you start
That's a great call out.
Like you said, any math equation that starts wrong is going to end wrong. And so, the report is just showing your work, and you're not going to go back and, I should have shown what I was thinking about in my brain. You can't do that. So having a system in place where you're showing your work as you go, and so everything's collated there. And that's what's so great about what we're building and other tools that are similar. You don't have to start with a Paramify. You can start with something as simple as SharePoint or Google Sheets, and just say, hey, this is where we're keeping our risk management. This is how we're handling multi-factor authentication. This is how we're handling single sign-on. Just really simple, and go from there. Right?
And that's the biggest call out is don't try to do this control by control. If you find yourself creating that spreadsheet with 800 lines and 800 checkboxes, check yourself, because that's the most painful way to do it.
And you're bound to miss something, right? And you're going to burn out, and then you'll have turnover within your team. And so if the turnover happens with that team in the execution, then you're putting your whole project at risk.
That's right.
So all of this is connected. If you start right, you have a better chance of ending right.
That's right. And failures in FedRAMP have real costs to them. Time, resources, people, their souls. It's hard. And so to recap, when you're going about FedRAMP, don't fall into these common traps. So make sure you're not scoping things incorrectly at the very beginning. Do a good planning process. Don't abdicate it. Be part of it. Make sure you've got the right team assembled. So a guide who knows, whether it's an internal employee or a consultant advisor group, 3PAO, an executive sponsor in your company. And then on the reporting, do it concurrently with the rest of the work. Do it from a risk-based approach. Get the right tools that can help you get through that process.
You're good. You're really good.
Learned from the best.
I guess you did.